This episode is brought to you by Summer School Electronics. With pedals like the Snow Day Delay, the Pep Rally Fuzz, the Trash Panda, and my personal favorite, the Science Fair, which is two classic dirt pedals in one, with a mid-boosted overdrive on one side, a black lab rat circuit on the other, and a blend knob to blend between them to find the perfect classic stacked dirt sound you're looking for, it's hard not to find something you'll love. Mark builds all of his pedals by hand in Syracuse, New York, where he also works as a full-time educator. In addition to the super fun graphics on their pedals, Mark also offers custom artwork. Want your dog's face on a pedal? He can do it. Want your face on a pedal? He can make that happen too. Go over to summerschoolelectronics.com and make sure to tell him that 40 Watt Podcast sent you. This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road. Forty Watters, welcome to another episode of the 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip. I am your host, and I am so thankful to be with you today and hang out and talk and chat. We got another topic episode this week because there's just stuff happening. There's stuff happening all over the place, and I want to talk about it. And so, but first, let's talk about the sponsors of this podcast. We're going to get into it immediately. So, sponsoring this podcast, we have two of my favorite companies. And I don't say that just because they're friends. I think we're friends because they're awesome anyway. But number one, I've got Mark over at Summer School Electronics, who just last week released his brand new pedal, the Class Reunion, which is a Russian big muff on one side and a soft clipping overdrive on the other, and you can blend between the two. It's super cool. I really enjoy playing the tones on it. It's not my kind of pedal, as evidenced by if you watch my demo of it. I don't know any 90s riffs to play on that pedal, but it's a lot of fun to play. I've been playing bass through it lately, and it sounds great for bass. The other sponsor of this podcast is Barry over at Grez Guitars, who is making some of the coolest guitars on the planet. I own two myself, and I have one here that's a loaner. I have a Mendocino baritone, and I have a Folsom, which is a Bigsby kind of guitar. I don't really know how to describe that one to people. It's like a Telecaster, but better. Way better than any Telecaster that I've played. But also, a lot of people don't know, Barry makes all sorts of cool things. If you go over to grezguitars.com and check out the gallery, you can see some of the really rad other custom guitars Barry has built, from archtops to acoustics. He does a little bit of everything. The Mendocino and the Folsom are all part of his standard line. Go check them out. Click the links below and tell them I sent you that way. Awesome. So we're through that part of the episode. This week I have my live stream co-host when we do the live stream, Steve from 60 Cycle Hum. What's going on, Steve?
What's up? Ryan is still says that we should call it the 40-60 show or the 60-40 show because it adds up to 100.
It does add up to 100. I mean, it is, 40 watt amp, 60 cycle hum. They kind of go hand in hand.
His whole thing is like, it's kind of riffing on the 2020 deal. We do cover a lot of like what's in the moment, whatever, on that. Yeah. Whatever we want, that's all kinds of guitar culture, pop culture, sports culture. It's the full 2020 bit. But
it's whatever we want to talk about at any given time is really what it is.
He said before the next time we do a live stream, he's going to upload a bunch of art, but it's all going to be on StreamYard. So I'm like,
oh yeah. So he should just send that to me. I've still got to do some work with Ecamm. I'm gonna hit up a couple of people that use it and see if I can figure out a couple of the issues I'm having with it. There's got to be a fix. I tried to do a live unboxing the other day with it where I wasn't sharing audio with someone and it just wasn't working, and I got to figure that out. But anyway, besides that, no, if Ryan wants to do graphic work for free, let's let's do that. Let's milk it. Um, I do think we're leaning into possibly some sponsors for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
monthly broadcast, so it'll be a fun time. But so sort of in that vein, though, because it's a few weeks here before we do another live stream,
Mm-hmm.
um, I really wanted to talk about the situation that's going on in the music store
Sure.
world, the guitar store world. There's a lot of things happening. Even today, after we'd already talked about doing this, we found out about another thing happening. And listeners, I'm burying leads here, but you've already seen the title of this episode. I'm sure you started to figure out what we're going to talk about a little bit. Is Guitar Center necessary? I want to start there. So, Guitar Center, we're going to focus heavily on Guitar Center because the biggest piece of this news is around Guitar Center. But I want to ask Steve, do you think Guitar Center is necessary?
Something's necessary.
Okay.
Is Guitar Center necessary? Not necessarily. But there's value in big box store. I found this article. I actually saw some hinting at this yesterday, but this is an article from back in 2020 when, at the time, CEO of Sweetwater, Chuck Surak, was basically making comments about how, like, Guitar Center, like Sweetwater at the time. I think since then, uh, Sweetwater has surpassed Guitar Center in terms of sales. I mean, the pandemic and everybody ordering stuff online has really played into the changing landscape. But back in 2020, Chuck Surak was talking about Guitar Center as an important part of the music instrument ecosystem. And one of the sentiments that a lot of people have echoed during this whole recent conversation about Guitar Center, as the future of Guitar Center has come up again, is what role Guitar Center plays in the guitar buying and selling ecosystem. And of course, a lot of people, the comment was, well, I go to Guitar Center to find out if I like a thing enough to buy it from Sweetwater, which I think is part of what Chuck Surak's comments back in 2020 were, in regards to the role Guitar Center plays in the musical instrument retail space.
Sure. So I remember reading that article because, believe it or not, the very first episode of this
Mm.
podcast was shortly after the Guitar Center bankruptcy in 2020. And it was back when I was just talking by myself into a microphone. And I talked about how I really hope, first of all, explained what a Chapter 11 bankruptcy is. It's not an actual business ending
Right.
bankruptcy, it's a debt restructuring bankruptcy. I'm not a tax professional. I'm a librarian. I know how to look things up. Um, but the trick was that I actually think we need Guitar Center is the thing filling the space of the thing we need right
Yeah.
now. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be Guitar Center, but I do feel like a big box retailer with physical locations
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
around the country is a thing that's needed. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But as for your numbers, real quick, I pulled some things up. I'm really interested. We're going to give a little bit of background on sort of market share and those kinds
Sure.
of informations. If that kind of stuff doesn't get you excited, I'm just hang on, just hold on for a minute. I promise we're going to get through this. So, as of 2023, yes, Sweetwater leads market shares.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this is going to blow your mind. Top 5 online stores in the global music instrument market, as reported by ecommercedb.com. Number 1, Sweetwater, with a global revenue of $1.6 billion.
Right.
They are the global leader right now. They were not in 2020. They have just skyrocketed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So if y'all are wondering why they pumped all that money into marketers and all of their influence market that they've done, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
With 99.4% of their sales being in the U.S.,
Sure.
that's their market share. Number 2, do you want to take a quick guess at who's number 2? I'll tell you it's not Guitar Center.
I would think it's Amazon.
It's Thomann.
Real okay, that makes sense.
Thomann is number 2 at almost 1.5 billion. And they've seen a 10.3% growth,
Mm-hmm.
the fastest of the top 5.
Oh, okay.
Their largest market share is in Germany with 35.6% of their sales in
Sure.
Germany. Um, number two is Amazon.
Number three.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, number
Okay.
three is Amazon with a $972 million market share with uh, 4.1% growth and 97.3% in the United
Right.
States. Now,
Wait,
that's where I have to stop giving you granular statistics because I'm not paying for access to the rest of this
sure.
article.
Sure.
But I can tell you that number four is not who you think it is either. It's Costco.
Yeah. Okay. I'm lost on that one.
Yeah, me too. And I can't get the rest of this data because I'm not paying whatever the cost of this. I'm sorry, I'm not paying the $475 a month to access this
Sure.
article.
Sure.
Yeah.
Costco
So
does have not. How is it Costco?
do they have an online marketplace or something like that that I'm not aware of?
Costco.com has like 20 musical instruments on it.
Yeah.
So I'm not, and their only guitar listed online. They have two, looks like two of them are a Washburn acoustic and the Keith Urban by Yamaha acoustic.
Yeah, I can't figure this out. I do see they've got a couple of other things. They carry some Roland stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I don't know how where that number comes from, and again, I can't get the granular data to go further than that. But then fifth is Guitar Center,
mm-hmm.
and so that is a distinct difference from 2020 when Guitar Center was number one. Still,
Right. Well,
that's marked
and I
decline.
know there was a conversation the last couple years doing what's that thing? Gear Fest.
Oh
The
yeah, yeah,
conversation had come up that at within Sweetwater, they don't see Guitar Center as a competitor. They see Amazon as their competitor. And I mean,
yeah.
the, Toman has expanded into sort of being in the United States, but I think because of the market share you discussed, like Sweetwater is, Toman's going to Toman. They're an alternative, but because they're kind of working in semi-exclusive regions.
Right,
I don't
exactly.
actually know if Sweetwater ships international at all. I know they used to not. Well, I don't know if that's
Yeah,
changed.
I don't remember them shipping internet. That's why I saw 99.4%. I don't know
Yeah.
what that 0.6% that's going elsewhere is, but it's really interesting to see that Sweetwater's absolutely taken over the market, and it's a market that Guitar Center should have had no trouble owning.
Hmm.
They shouldn't. They had the reach. They had the stores. Um, I they I mean they made some changes. They updated their app recently. I logged in and noticed it was different and it was better. Things worked better.
Right.
Um, but also I'm still seeing listings with the wrong picture.
This is on
On
Guitar Center.
Yeah,
Is
Guitar Center, their U
the used
selection. They're
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing listings with the wrong pictures. They still don't do descriptions. It at best it'll say this item comes with a case.
Right. So I
It
found that Google, if you look for that e-commerce insights article, has Costco listed at 397 million.
Oh, interesting.
But I think you can see maybe that you can see that like in the snippet, but then if you actually go to the article, it's behind, as you noted, it's behind paywall.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Uh, oh no, this is a different. Is this just because this is within the United States?
Oh, that okay. So that's U.S.
So it
sales.
shows
I was looking at global revenue.
right. So it shows the top three based on country or by global. So under global, you can't see Costco, but uh under country you can see Costco, which is weird, but whatever. And
Okay.
I still don't really understand. I wonder if they're counting like things that other places that we're not thinking of as musical instruments,
That's what
because
I'm
it might just
wondering.
be like music equipment. So as soon as you roll in, like if you were to like tweak the market a little and call a television sound bar a musical instrument, or a karaoke machine a musical instrument,
As musical instrument, that
that
changes
could
everything.
change the way those numbers are.
Stereo system,
Re-
if that's still a thing.
Regardless, going back to the Guitar Center thing, I found the final quote in this article that I was talking
Uh-huh.
about earlier, where Chuck Surak, who again no longer CEO of Sweetwater, but
Right.
certainly was for a very long time, um, his quote was, I do not want Guitar Center to go bankrupt. They're good for our industry, even though they're not as good as they used to be. Our industry needs them badly. They need to inspire young people to come in and learn how to play an instrument, and that's something they did pretty well. Now, I know that
You said Guitar Center CEO. You mean
sorry,
Sweetwater, right?
Sweetwater CEO, no longer
Yeah.
Sweetwater CEO, Chuck Surak,
Yeah.
with Sweetwater going private, to private capital recently. Chuck Surak is no longer, at least directly, involved there. Um,
Sure.
but I do think he says something here, and again, this is 4 years old. He says they need to inspire young people to come in and learn how to play an instrument, and that does go against what Gabe Del Porto is saying a little bit. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something in the discourse that's really being lost. Is a lot of the discourse around Guitar Center right now is binary. It's either they should only sell cheap stuff, or they should uh or or rather that they should only sell cheap stuff, or there's this interpretation that by Del Porto saying they should reduce their sub $300 or sub $500 or whatever offering, that somehow it means you're going to go into Guitar Center and it's going to be only Gibson Les Paul standards and no Epiphones,
Right.
as if
Exactly.
like you can't have both, as if when you go into Guitar Center right now, I don't know, I haven't been in a Guitar Center in years. I
I go into one regularly.
I haven't
I've been in one in just last few weeks, and they're sad states of
no,
affair right
I
now.
haven't been in. My understanding, and just, this is coming out, you said tomorrow, so
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
May 3rd. uh I recorded with Ryan last night. Our episode will come out on May 6th, so
I love
some of
preempting
this
y'all.
might be a little retread. I'm going to try to hit points without getting too deep into covering the same things that I've already said last night, but of course there will be some retread. But the conversation is different because the conversation with Ryan is different. But
Yeah.
one of the things that he said is his understanding is that both of the San Diego stores are functionally are considered flagship or near flagship stores. I
Okay,
don't know
that
if
makes
that's
sense.
true. I know my experience with the La Mesa Guitar Center is
Mm-hmm.
very different than what I've heard from you talking about Guitar Center and other people talking about Guitar Center. I've always felt like the La Mesa one was a pretty nice shop. The
Mm-hmm.
employees are hit or miss, but I was, folks like us are advanced enough in our gear nerdery that, you know it's the Ron Swanson at Lowe's meme, like, sir, how can I
Right.
help you? No, excuse
I
me,
know
I know
more than
more
you do.
than you do. um but I wish that wasn't the case,
That shouldn't
and
be
it
the
shouldn't be
case.
the
That doesn't.
case.
No. And
Absolutely.
so my experience here. So we have the Jackson, Mississippi Guitar
Right.
Center that is full of some really, really amazing staff members. I genuinely love most of the staff there.
Hmm.
And I say most of the staff because I haven't met them all. I don't know. I might love all of them, but um, they do feel like they've been, despite being a very busy store,
Hmm.
they have been understaffed. They've been undersupplied. Um, they need an update so dramatically badly, if not a complete location change.
Right.
But it's not like they're not getting people coming in.
Hmm.
There is constantly, every time I'm in there, they are full of people trying out guitars, amps, renting PA equipment seems to be extremely common. I've seen as many as 3 people in line to pick up rented
Hmm.
PA. So it's not like they're not busy. They don't have enough staff.
Right.
They don't have enough hands to keep the store in order, to keep. And I'm just gonna put this online. I'm gonna be real. Part of the store not being in order is that they sell so many cheap guitars and they get a lot of tire kickers coming in just picking up guitars and playing around. Stuff gets banged up, stuff
Sure,
gets
sure.
there's not enough eyes to keep. I'm not worried. I'm not as worried about theft as I am. It's just keeping things orderly because people don't care.
Yeah.
I'm being old man screaming at clouds here. Because it's just the truth. It's what I've seen.
Do you
Now the
do you think,
was that
just to interrupt that thought, do you think people would care more about, uh being gentle when they take stuff down off the wall if they were, pulling down or when they're pulling down a Fender American Pro versus pulling down a Classic Vibe? Like,
I
they
think
think about the price tag, that like, oh, it doesn't matter if I ding this because it's a piece of, I think Classic Vibes are great, but from just thinking about it
yeah,
from it's a cheap ass
yeah,
import, like who gives a shit, versus pulling down like, this is the holy grail Fender American
right.
Pro 2. Do you think that mentality fits in, or do you think tire kickers, they're not going to care no matter what?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think this is a completely shifts the conversation one way or the other with the price because you're going to get some either way. But I think you're going to get just a different experience when you have I don't know, a healthier mix and a
Sure,
healthier
sure.
environment where you're I don't know, better able to care for your customers also. That's the real thing that's
Yeah,
coming into me
yeah.
here is I think it's a lot less about the instruments, although that's a thing, and more about making sure that you have enough staff to take care of the store and the customer and create a better experience. In fact, we're going to get to a quote about that here in a minute from Gabe
Yeah,
Del Porto.
yeah.
But I went to the Birmingham Guitar Center. It's actually in Hoover, Alabama. Because this was back before I bought a couple of expensive things earlier this year, and
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some tire kicking myself on an amp they had, and it was a high end amp,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew they had it because it was on their used section online. Well, I was like, well, I'm not that far away. I've got to go over that area anyway. Let me go try out this amp while I'm there,
Right.
dude. I had to get a hold of someone at the circulation. Sorry, I work in the library at the retail desk
Right.
at the checkout counter, who then had to find a manager because that amp wasn't on the floor anywhere. It was locked in a back room somewhere
Okay.
where they had to go get it to bring it out to plug it into something for me to try it
Was it
out.
like still within its 30-day? Because you know how
Nope.
some
It
stores,
had been it
they
had
do
been
the.
there for 6
Okay,
months.
because that would be my only thought. Is I know some of Guitar Centers. It's interesting. Like some Guitar Centers, that the day that they buy something, they'll put it on, if they think it's going to move. They'll put it on the floor with a 30-day tag on it. So
Right.
basically, they wait
Yeah.
30 days to see if it will pop up on local police reports before they will actually sell it. Other Guitar
Yeah.
Centers don't care,
I
apparently.
think it's
But
state law in some
oh,
places. I think that's what it comes down to
that makes
because
sense.
in a lot of states, guitar centers are treated like pawn
Right,
shops
right.
in that regard, so they have to follow the same law that pawn shops have to follow. That there's a window 30 or 45 days before something can actually be sold.
That makes sense.
Um, but no, this item was way past the date. They just didn't put it on the floor. Not even in like a platinum room or like behind glass or
Right,
it just
right.
wasn't there.
Maybe it had.
If you didn't know it was there, you
I
didn't know
mean,
it was
maybe it
there.
had been there so long they just said like, "Screw it, this is never going to sell. Let's just put it in the back."
No, I've actually talked to the manager there. They never put it on the floor.
Oh, what was it?
It never made it to the floor. In fact, it was a Two Rock Bloomfield
Mm,
Drive. In fact, it ended up being relocated to the Houston location, where it sold within a week.
so it's just,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thing. And I think this kind of. I mean, there's just so many directions I think Guitar Center can go, and I think
yeah,
the part of the thing that's been frustrating about the discourse online for me, uh, is that I think we all, for the most part, agree that Guitar Center for the average person across the board sucks.
yeah. And it
And it
shouldn't.
doesn't. And,
That's who I actually think they don't serve. I don't think they serve the average everyday
right.
guitar player
And I
anymore.
think that's part of like that quote. that's going around, and people are twisting it, right? People say like, well,
Yeah.
uh, the part of the quote where he says, where was it? I think you read it earlier. Oh, somewhere along the way, we forgot who our core customer was. Our core customer is the serious musician, the gigging artist or passionate player where music is a big part of their identity. And I think that idea of like, whether you consider yourself serious, like I'm not a serious musician, but I think about guitars seriously. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's what he means. And so, there's value in, and so people I think get hung up on the gigging artist part, and they go like, well, professional musicians aren't going to Guitar Center because they're going to get their, they're going to buy their 57 Strat reissue, and that's their one guitar, and they won't ever buy another guitar, because that's what a lot of that's what a lot of professional musicians do, right? Like,
It is. They do, but there's also a large, being in the doing this for the last 3 years. And previously in my life working sound, it's in festivals and at
right,
clubs,
right,
talking to professional musicians. No, no, no. They run the spectrum as well of
sure,
I have this one guitar,
sure,
this one amp, and my pedal board. Also, I've got a room full of 20 amps at home,
right,
and I just decide
right,
what I'm bringing. Because, like you said, I I don't consider myself a professional musician anymore.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's debatable how serious I actually am, to be honest. But what I am is guitar and music are a major part of my identity and
Right,
who I am.
right.
And I should be the market. You should be the market that Guitar Center is catering
Yeah.
towards. And I don't feel like they do.
I don't think they do. And I think for both of us with all of this, Ryan and I danced around this in our before we started recording, this idea of like how much we wanted to talk about it. I
Yeah.
don't, their Guitar Center has some 100% has some great employees, and they have some great
Yes.
stores. They also have, you know, my experience with my local Guitar Centers often was that they were guys who were musicians, and they got the job at Guitar Center because presumably there's an employee discount, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted some instrument, or they saw it as ways like, oh, I can get instruments cheap and I need a job anyway. I knew a Guitar Center employee who uh, was a local musician, acoustic guitar player, singer songwriter type. So he could he could sell acoustic guitars from like a tonality standpoint, but he didn't
Right.
really like know. He couldn't tell you like, oh yeah, the Taylor 800 series has featured, it's the 800 series because it has these tops and these backs and sides and whatever. Now he could have been trained to that eventually. I don't know if he was. I know he was like taking classes to learn about electric guitars because his takes on electric guitars were that he bought at the time, I think it was the Fender Telecaster Custom, uh, and he got it because he thought Bigsby's looked cool. Like he didn't, like he was kind,
Look, that's as valid as any to
as a
me.
singer songwriter, he was kind of venturing into that whole like Nashville look and vibe. So it was like if
Yeah.
he was going to play if he was going to bring on a full band and he was going to lead the band, front man for himself with a backing band, and he wanted to do a song that had electric guitar, he wasn't going to play leads or anything. He was a strummer, but he wanted to look the part, and the part was Telecaster with a Bigsby. That was what he decided the part looked like for him. So that, that's the gamut. On the flip side of it is, you and I, we both know Jason
Right.
Mays from Working Class Music, who is probably one of the most knowledgeable. Like he works in this same business that we're talking about, the YouTube space. He's a gear junkie. Like he knows how to make things. He
Right.
knows how to make sounds.
He
He
is a
is the guy.
serious
He's
musician in a
yeah,
band that
yeah.
gigs regularly.
So there's
Yeah,
so there's a gamut there, just like there's a gamut with the types of people who shop there, you know.
yeah.
But I think for
And
employees, they probably want more people. They need more Jasons and less acoustic singer songwriter guys, unless they're gonna keep those types of guys in the acoustic room. but in in the format that I've seen for their stores, that's not the case. Right for
Yeah, that's not the
you know,
case. I see a lot of non-drummers in the drum section.
sure.
I see lots of, non-techie people running the PA and
Yeah.
keyboard room,
Yeah.
which at some point the keyboard room and the PA and the live sound became the
Right.
same section in a lot of
My
stores. It's really
my
weird. This
under
podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy Strings. I'm a snob, at least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy Strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringer are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy strings today.
my understanding, and maybe this has changed, but again, from the guy that I knew, uh, what he told me was that when you get a job at Guitar Center, they basically look for one, are you personable? Two, do you know anything about music, musical instrument space? And then
Yeah.
they are either going to start you off at the front guitar desk where you're selling, basically if somebody's going to come up to you and say I want these strings, or I want these picks, or I want, it's all the things that are behind you that you can just turn around and grab. Or you're going
Mm-hmm.
to start in live sound, because the number one selling thing in the Guitar Center live sound department is XLR cables and Shure SM58s. and
That completely
and so
tracks.
all you need to know is, when someone comes up and they say I need XLR cables, you say, well, we've got the whatever their in-house brand was for XLR, on the thing over there, and we've got a sale 3 for $20. Or, well, the Shure SM58 is an industry staple for a reason. Or you can get out again our version of, which is it, Digital Reference. Is that the brand? It feels like that sounds right to me,
I
but
I can't remember. I'm gonna
um,
look that up while you
but
talk.
there is a Guitar Center, I think, house brand for microphones, and it's like, oh yeah, you can get the SM58, or I'll sell you 3 of these for the same price as one SM58, and it's our house brand, and it's spec the same, and they,
Yep, Digital
yeah,
Reference, and it's Livewire is the house brand for
yep. Well,
cables.
there's also like another, like, I think Digital Reference also makes cables
Oh,
that
really?
are
Okay,
cheaper than live wires.
gotcha.
I never had a problem with live wires, but that's a whole
I
other
me either.
topic. So
Yeah,
so the point being, like, I gave Guitar Center, I don't think has the staff, in my experience, to pull off what the CEO wants to do. Now that doesn't mean they
yeah,
can't get the staff; it just means they don't have
yeah.
it in
I
my
mean,
experiences.
it means a couple of things. It means they've got to be serious about investing in more staff.
Right?
They've got to be serious about investing in training their staff, because if we know anything about Sweetwater, as you have taken the test to become
Yeah,
a sales rep at Sweetwater, you need to know your stuff before they let you start
yeah.
answering
And
phones.
and you need to know a very wide level of stuff. So
Yeah.
something that Guitar Center could do to work around that is you could highly specialize your employees.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel pretty confident that I could probably, between having a black belt in Google Foo, and and just my general knowledge of the instrument, as long as the customer doesn't ask me to play, uh, I feel like I could walk into a Guitar Center, the average Guitar Center, and sell guitars better than the average Guitar Center employee. Uh,
I think I have walked into Guitar Center and sold guitars better than the average Guitar Center employee.
I used to go we had this store called Sport Chalet, and I
Uh huh.
used to go in there and I'd just be looking at whatever, like, baseball equipment they happen to have. And I have sold equipment to little league parents before, and I was just in there, like, looking at stuff, and the salesperson had come over and was like, "Oh yeah, you should get this and that." And as soon as they walked away, I looked at the parent. I'm like, check your league's rules. I'm pretty sure what they just recommended to you is not going to be legal for your kid to use. And with I think with like bats, once you buy it and you hit something with it, you cannot
You're
return it.
done. That's it.
So
Nope.
I was like, check your league rules. You have a phone. Can you look them up? Anyway, point being, um, I ran some numbers earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is part of the struggle. One, I don't know what Guitar Center pays. I think it's commissions based as well.
I think they got rid of the
They got rid
commission
of commission
base.
base.
I think I'm going to confirm that though.
So if they don't pay commission based, maybe this changes. But the way that I look at it is, if Guitar Center is open 10 hours a day, and you need like at least 6 employees to run the guitar floor, which maybe you need, and I'm saying to run it at the level that I feel like Del Porto is talking about, you're
Right.
talking about covering 60 working hours a day, 7 days a week. So say I'm saying 10 hours. So they're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's 10-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
So you need 420 working hours, plus you want a little bit of overage. So you're talking about filling about 520 hours a week of labor. So that's about 13. That's 13 nearly full-time employees. Um, so then in turn, the question is like, where does every Guitar Center in the United States, which there's like 300 of them, find 13 trainable, competent salespeople, people who are both salespeople and knowledgeable, right? Like
Yeah.
that feels like a lot to me. 13 people of these people, right, to fill this because that works out 60 hours, 60 working hours a day, 7 days a week. It's 420 full-time hours. So that's a minimum of
Okay.
10 and a half employees. Plus, again, I'm
Yeah.
saying two or rounding 12 and a half employees. So 13 employees to cover 1 week.
Yeah, and that's assuming you're just covering those weeks. As someone who supervises staff, you have to have more than the
Yeah.
minimum requirement to stock, because there are people who get sick, go on
Yep.
vacation. They have
Yep.
gigs. One of the things about Guitar Center that is actually a good thing, they're pretty lenient and understanding
Sure.
when musicians go on tour or play shows. But I did read, I found a Reddit thread where somebody was talking a year ago about still getting commission. They've changed the structure though, so it's not as commission dependent. Although apparently some people in that thread, in my quick like 30-second glance, were mad because now they're actually making less money because they were really good at selling stuff. But the average employee is making more money now.
Gotcha.
So it's I get it. I totally get it.
Somebody in one of the threads I was reading this past week was saying that they make their commissions on the cheap stuff. And while I understand that, part of me does wonder, like, would it be easier to make your commissions if your Gibson Les Paul standards were within arm's reach? Because the way I kind of see it is like, if I'm going to take my kid to go buy an instrument, my teenager to go buy their first instrument, first of all, my kid can play my stuff. It's cool, whatever. But like, they want something their own, they want the pink Fender, whatever. I guess they don't. All the pink Fenders are CME exclusives, but they want a color of a thing that I don't have, right? They want whatever. They want
that new Tom DeLonge.
Yeah, they want the new Tom DeLonge. So we're gonna go to Guitar Center. We're gonna check out the new Tom DeLonge, and I don't want to go to Guitar Center, but I know it's there, and I know they're gonna have it. So I'm gonna take my kid to check it out. What's the motivation? I'm not in this position, but I'm sure a lot of parents are, right? Parents who are also musicians, they're going to take their kid there. Their kid's going to like do the thing and whatever. They're going to tire kick until they find the one that they like, and you're going to put down the money. But I don't feel like the incentive is there for me to also go and be like, hey, while you're checking out these Tom DeLonge Starcasters, I'm going to go check out, Ernie Ball Music Man or whatever, something again in that premium, maybe not $3,000, but, or again, what's a Les Paul? I keep saying Les Paul standards. What's a Les Paul standard right now?
I think they range from $27.99 to $3.
Yeah. So, $27.99. and I know they have those, but it's like those are going to be high up.
Right.
I'm going to need some help to do it. And do I want help from a guy who's like, I feel like I'm inconveniencing him?
And not only that, because you probably are, because they don't have time to stock the store.
Right.
So you're actually taking away his time on shift to get the store stocked to get a
Yeah.
guitar
So
down.
so that
That
that goes into a thing that I did not say. I wanted to say when we recorded last night and I forgot, but I'll say it here. When I talk about 13 employees, that's just to run the floor. And again, that's
right.
assuming you can run the floor with 6. And I'm saying 6 is that number you need to give to so every customer feels like they get personal attention. I know when I go into it, the last time I was in a Guitar Center, I felt like there was maybe 2 or 3 employees in the guitar section, not counting acoustics. I'm just talking about electric guitars.
Yeah.
And I felt like, if I actually needed help, it would have been a struggle. I don't, again, I don't
So
know.
the Jackson, Mississippi Guitar Center, I'm pretty sure I've never seen them have more than 4 people on staff at a given
For like the
shift.
entire
The entire
store.
store.
Right. So I think part of that premium experience is making people feel like you got to, and this is tricky, is training your employees how to make the customer feel like they were attended to without making them feel like they were helicoptered, which is
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Waiters
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
develop that same skill, and it's hard.
A thought that I had though, that again, I don't think I talked about this with Ryan. I talked about it with him off mic, and then I forgot about it when we recorded. Is one of the frequent complaints is that the instruments don't that they're not taken care of, that you go in there. Somebody in the 60 cycle hum group was posting like, oh, I go to Guitar Center, but I don't want to try out a premium guitar that's just covered in sweat and boogers and whatever. Okay, it seems a little extreme, but sure, I get the
Yeah.
sentiment. Part of that whole thing is I would have every employee, maybe they've got, it's a fanny pack thing, I don't know, you can make all your employees wear work aprons, give that premium experience, like, because
Yeah.
when I go into Pitbull, and Sean, who's the lead guitar, like he's the head of the repair shop at Pitbull, comes out and he's wearing his like freaking carpenter work apron, and he's got all his tools. That's a premium experience. Now I know Sean
Yeah.
personally, he's a good guy, he knows how to work, but I'm saying, like, if you make your Guitar Center employees, your guitar guys, look like they're also serious technicians, because they're wearing some kind of accessories belt, and
Pocket
here
protectors. Let's
here's
go.
all you need: pocket protector with feeler gauges in it. But
Yes.
here's all you need really in that belt. Okay, have a couple cables, maybe have some picks, have a bottle of Dunlop 65 or whatever, and a microfiber cloth. And
Yep.
as you're walking around the store, you don't have to pay attention to your employee or to your customer. You introduce, say, hey, I'm in this section. Let me know if you need any help. And then just go start wiping down guitars. And when that
Yeah.
customer is done, pay attention to what guitars are pulling down. And when they put them back, make a note, wipe them down. Because when that customer sees you wiping, and when you're not attending to a customer, you put this on YouTube. I'm doing a lot of Italian hands. I
Yeah.
usually
You're
don't,
fine.
because I'm usually writing things down and looking at my iPad. um,
Yeah.
but when you're doing that, it's going to signal to that customer, wow, this store takes care of their instruments. Now, I talked
Mm-hmm.
about those 6 employees I think they need on the floor to run for a day, and that's 10 hours. So you actually probably need more than 6. You need like 8 employees to cover a full day every day, but a minimum of 6. Um, One of those things that I think has to go with this, or at least in my brain, and I'm not playing with money here. Private
Right.
capital, Aries, if they're owned by Aries, what's Aries management uh, worth? What are they worth? Aries is worth $41 billion. If they want to make Guitar Center work, they can throw as much money as $41 billion in the private capital space is simultaneously like maybe not a lot of money, but
Right.
it's also infinite money when you're Guitar Center. Like if
Exactly.
they want it to be, it can become virtually infinite money. So here's what I'm envisioning in this is a if Guitar Center is open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at 7:30, maybe 7 p.m. or whatever, an hour before closing,
Mm-hmm.
your tech crew comes in. Say it's 4 employees. That sounds like a fair number. I don't know.
Sure.
Their job, their only job, is to restring guitars, or their main job. So during the course of the day, if a customer uh, pulls down an instrument and says, "Hey, this pickup switch isn't working," or they break a string and you see it, you're taking that guitar off the floor, you're finding another one in your warehouse to replace it, and you're putting it in an area that's functionally a quarantine area. So when that tech team comes in, their job is to, and you got to write a note, of course. You got hang tags that
Sure.
says like switch isn't working or whatever, and their only job is to repair switches and restring guitars.
Yeah.
And
And most of the time, like fixing that switch is just using some contact
sure,
cleaner,
sure,
right? It can be that simple. I think so. What you're describing reminds me of a concept that's been used in city development and reducing crime in areas. So y'all stick with me. This is weird. I
Cop
know. I
City,
promise.
like Atlanta, right? You're going to
I'm
talk about how
yeah.
good Atlanta's Cop City is.
No, but maybe I'm gonna take this in a weird direction. So because there was, I think New York City was one of the first to do this in some
Mm-hmm,
neighborhoods or
mm-hmm.
boroughs. But there's been a running theme in cities introducing laws about how you maintain your property that faces public spaces.
Mm.
And so, a town I used to live in did it. And one of the things they did, like things like your yard has to be maintained. They're not saying it has to be like you can only have, any like super strict requirements, but hey, your grass needs to be cut every now and again. Maintain your sidewalks. No parking dead cars in your yard. No, don't cover your windows in like certain things. And a lot of people get really bent out of shape about it because they find that, they think it's government overreach, and that's not what this conversation is
Sure.
about. But what they found in cities where they started implementing those kinds of requirements for properties that face public spaces, like your backyard can be just as unkept and untamed as you want
Right.
it to be. It's whatever faces the public
Mm-hmm.
road. They actually find that by forcing people to maintain their properties,
Mm-hmm.
they've actually seen decrease in crime.
Right.
They've seen more people out on streets going out and doing things because the place looks nicer and it's more inviting, engaging for people to do. So it's been a crime fighting tactic to actually say, hey, we need you to do these things, take care of your space. Your neighbor's going to take care of their space. And yes, it also affects property values, but that's not actually the intent.
Right.
The intent is to reduce crime, to make a more engaging and more of a community in your neighborhood or town. I think sort of what you're describing is that same thing that Guitar Center so desperately needs to do. They need to clean up their stores. They need to change the way they're handling poorly maintained instruments.
Right.
They need to better improve their staff so that they can create that better user experience. And they need to do it fast because in the last 4 years, they have dropped from the number one retailer in the music space to number 5 or 4, depending on which you reference. They need to fix it fast. And so I wonder, is this like a last gasp? Is it too little too late? Do you think they can be salvaged?
It might be. I mean, again, looking at the limited public sentiment I've seen, there a lot of this pushback. A lot of the pushback I've seen is like, well, Guitar Center is the Walmart of guitar stores, and somewhat
they don't have to be though. They should be the target of guitar stores.
Maybe they didn't used to be, and that's absolutely what his point is without saying it, he's basically acknowledging Guitar Center as the Walmart of guitar stores, and we shouldn't be, and maybe not even. I mean, Target's kind of in a weird space too.
It is now.
You
remember when Target used to be bougie, like it used to be fancy?
No, when was that?
Like, there's this whole stigma that like Target was like the upscale, like every person's everything store. Anyway, it's silly.
But I mean, to that point, I I pose the same question to like our audience, my audience, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, is regardless of what it costs, like what would Guitar Center have to do to get you to go there again and get you to buy something? What needs to change? Like start there, because I think that's basically what the CEO is asking, and people want to say like, well, this is he's so out of touch with what Guitar Center is good at, which is selling $300 instruments to kids and whatever. And it's like, no, he's acknowledging that, and he's saying like it's not a successful model, that it's not actually making uh like the year over year increase in sales that they want to see. So
That's exactly
so
it.
I mean, there is that whole sentiment there where it's like, no, he's acknowledging that like Guitar Center is really good at moving cheap instruments, and how do we get the kid who uh bought the Squire amp pack whatever thing for $250-$300, how do we get that kid to come back to buy a Schecter? How do we get that kid
Yeah.
to come back and buy an Epiphone? Here's an idea that I pitched to Ryan, uh, and folks, I don't remember what his reaction to it, but like was, but I would have loved to see, or like this is just like a cool idea, and this is again like this is a logistical nightmare where instead of sending out like nationwide email blast, Guitar Center would have to maybe find a way to regionalize it a little. Uh, Epiphone just came out with all of these, and it requires a lot of agility, which agility is very hard in retail. Uh,
Especially in a something the size of
yeah,
Guitar Center with the number of
yeah.
locations they have.
But the big conversation a few months ago, uh, was it even a few, like maybe 2 months ago or less, was all of these overpriced Epiphones.
Yeah.
Guitar Center could have, should have, maybe had in, and maybe they only do it in the big cities. Uh, you know, Epiphone weekend. You have a question about why the Epiphone has a Firebird, or like you're just looking at it online and you go, Epiphone has a $700 Firebird and a $1,700 Firebird. What the hell is going on?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that
What's the
that was the
difference?
big question. Like, why does Epiphone have a 17? Was it 1700 Firebird?
Yeah.
Whatever, 16,
Yep.
$1,700. Now you got Epiphone weekend. We have all the new Epiphone models. Come check them out. Get your hands on a Dave Grohl.
Well, so I'm gonna just a quick pivot here. Some guitar centers do that kind of thing. I was talking to Mark from Summer School
Yeah,
Electronics, and he has done like pedal days at his local
really.
guitar centers where he brings his pedals and he answers questions, or he answers questions about making pedals or and stuff like that at his guitar
That's
center
cool. Yeah, I
there
didn't.
in Syracuse,
Yeah,
New York.
Syracuse.
Uh, so that's a really cool thing. That should be company
Yeah,
policy. That shouldn't be individual manager making it happen at a particular store. That should be, hey, we're going to do these
right.
events.
I,
So, yeah, I don't think it has to be something that nationally you have to say, every guitar center on this Saturday you're having an
you're
Epiphone
right.
day. I think that what you can do is say that once a month you need to be looking for ideas for a special weekend event or maybe a
Mm-hmm.
weeknight event, something to bring people in the store that's educational, that's engaging. Hey, here's some boilerplate
Right.
ideas that we put together that you could do and that we would
Mm-hmm.
support. One, you got to say, hey, we're willing to put money into this to make it happen. Maybe once a month is too often. Maybe once a quarter, just something to engage with the public, with your people you're trying to sell guitars, your customer base, a little more directly. And you've got to create a better environment for your customers to come in and feel comfortable in just kind of hanging
Yeah.
out,
Do
looking
you
around.
remember?
You've got to
Do you
find a way to,
do you remember
huh?
Guitar Mageddon?
Yes, I do remember
So,
Guitar Mageddon. Don't they just call it Guitar Month now or
well,
something like that?
Guitar Mageddon was a guitar contest.
Oh yeah.
So that was like they were having, in fact, and the last one I'm seeing, because there's a bunch of videos, and I'm not seeing anything
Uh huh.
that's like later than 2004, but I thought there were more of them. But it's basically this. the Milford. I found a Milford Daily News, uh, where it says that Guitarmageddon, where is was to determine the quote best up and coming guitarist in the country. Competition sponsored by Guitar Center. The 3-month long search was held at the 100 Guitar Center locations. This is 2002, including
Yeah.
one in Natick, wherever the hell this is, in Ohio, I guess. Throughout the country, over 2,000 guitarists competed. So I guess like you would win your regional, like you would win your local store, and then you would go on to your
Yep.
regional, say Southern California. It's a whole thing. Like I'm sure it sucks if you try to have a real job, but it's like a really screwball idea. But I think there's ideas like that definitely have legs about events. I know, like again, not Pitbull will have artists come in. Tosin Abasi, I feel like, was at Pitbull not too long ago. I don't know if Guitar Center does stuff like that anymore. I don't.
I don't know if they do or not either. I feel like it got run by okay, so just going to be honest, the former CEO of Guitar Center, if I remember
Mm-hmm.
correctly, had previous history in grocery stores. And you can tell he ran Guitar
Right.
Center like a grocery
And it was
store.
just
He didn't run it in an
right,
engagement
right.
space. He ran it almost like a necessity shop. Like if you're the only grocery store in your neighborhood in a city, of course everyone's going to come there because they have to buy groceries, right? But if you are selling a luxury leisure item, which is what guitars are, these are not needed to live. You need to find a way to be more engaging because no one has to come in your store ever. And I think that's really what it amounts to. And just to pivot just a little bit, I think we're seeing that as of today, as we're recording, May 2nd, Sam Ash has announced they're closing every store. Where they thought they were just going to close some of them, they're closing all of them.
And I think Guitar Center probably would have been there a long time ago if they weren't owned again by a private capital. Because I did see so at first that it's, and I think maybe it's still a little bit up in the air whether or not Sam Ash will get like maybe some other store or maybe private capital will come in and try to do something with it. I don't know how actually dire their situation is. Because I know there are these situations where a store will say, well, we're going out of business, and then they do their surge, they do their clearance sales, and the numbers look really good, and then somebody comes in and says like, well, your numbers look really good when you put everything on sale, so maybe there's actually still a little bit of life here.
I think Sam Ash is also in a unique situation where Sammy Ash passed away not too long ago, and I think that maybe, I don't know. I feel like, and I think we talked about this a little bit separately, is that, that was sort of his store, his vision, his whole thing. And maybe with him gone, there's a little less fervor to hold on to it and just say, you know what, that time they made it 100 years, which is insane. It's time to call this the end.
They only have 24 stores right now. So
I thought it was 44.
Oh, I'm just going off. Maybe this is I'm going off Wikipedia. So
so in March they said they were going to close 18 of their 44 stores.
Right. So I think,
and now they're closing the remaining 26.
Yeah. So
that's it.
And again, I don't know what to make of that. I know I learned late last night that when Musician's Friend was bought out by Guitar Center, that Musician's Friend actually had 9 stores.
Yeah, that blows my mind. I had no idea.
I only ever knew them as an online retailer, but also 9 stores. So if you don't live where one of those 9 stores are, how are you supposed to know they exist? Sam Ash, until like 6 years ago, was like a little bit mythological because they had never had a store in San Diego until I think it was like 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. So
yeah, I only ever knew they had stores because there was one I think there was one in Nashville, and I went to it when I lived in
I'd heard of them, but
I may be remembering that wrong. Maybe it was a Mars Music that I went to pre Sam Ash buying out Mars Music. I don't remember.
But yeah, I just I guess at its core, uh, whether or not Guitar Center doesn't successfully change, in the short term, it doesn't impact the way that I look at gear or buy gear or shop for gear.
No. No.
But the long-term ramifications, it could that could actually cause a pretty big shift in the way that the local used market operates. What does the local price of a Mexican Stratocaster do when you can't go buy one at Guitar Center for whatever the hell they cost right now? I don't know.
Well,
$900.
that, and you don't have the easy out of selling one for 60% of value either.
So I think from an ecosystem standpoint, and I think from like a fun brain exercise standpoint, it's more interesting to think about like I said earlier, like what does a Guitar Center have to do to get me to go back in and actually consider buying something?
Put one closer to your route home from work.
I could take a left instead of a right at some point and just go. I still haven't been to the one that's like 10 miles away from me. I'm not that busy on a Saturday.
I get it. Well, I tell you what, listeners, we're going to move this over to Patreon, and we're going to continue a little bit of conversation. So if you enjoying this and you want to continue listening and you want to help the podcast along, you can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast. That is 40watt podcast, or you can put it in your Google search engine. Your Google mobile will take you directly there. And where for as little as, $3 a month, you can support the podcast. $5 a month gets you extra content every episode. Steve, thanks for hopping on real quick and talking about this. Yeah. So we're going to go over, talk a little more on Patreon. And so listeners, until next time we meet, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.